From some very questionable family relationships to potential deep ties with illegal organizations, here are the top 5 mysterious secrets the church is hiding from us. Number 5 on this list is Cadaver Synod. This is one of the weirdest events in history, guys. Daily Gister says, in 897 the Vatican saw one of the most bizarre episodes in history. The corpse of a pope was put on trial by his living successor. Pope Formosus, dead for a few months, was hardly qualified to defend himself in a court of law. Nonetheless, Pope Stephen VI had the body disinterred, dressed in robes, and propped up on the papal throne to stand trial. He even appointed a deacon to speak on the corpse's behalf. While Stephen VI hurled accusations at Formosus, the accused remained stoically silent, as might be expected of a corpse. The dead pope was found guilty of usurping the papacy. Stephen VI declared all of his acts as pope null and void. All consecrations, all appointments, all ordinations were undone. So, as you guys can imagine, the church doesn't really talk about this episode too much because it's kind of embarrassing, honestly. Clearly, the current pope during this time was not fit to be in charge at all and might have even been losing his mind a little bit. This is pretty dumb, but at least it makes for a good story to tell at a dinner party or something, so there, stuff that one in your back pocket and save it for later, guys. Number 4 on this list is Sixtus VI. Sixtus VI was a pope who was in power back in the late 1400s. He definitely made some questionable life choices though, some of which I'm sure the church would love to forget. Business Insider writes, Sixtus VI, elected in 1471, apparently had 6 illegitimate children, including one with his sister. That didn't stop him from policing the sexual appetites of the underlings, though. He created a church tax on and charged priests for having mistresses. Sixtus VI also had a taste for nepotism, as did many other popes. He made 6 of his nephews cardinals. My dude literally had a kid with his sister. I'm an only child, so I don't really know what it's like to have a sibling, but even I'm grossed out about hearing that. Obviously, it's a pretty bad look for the church when their literal leader is shacking up with his sis. Something that I don't think God or the Bible is gonna look too kindly upon. Number 3 on this list is God's Banker. God's Banker was the nickname that they gave to a man named Roberto Calvi. Forbes writes, it was described as a scene straight out of an Alfred Hitchcock film. The man's corpse dangled from an orange nylon rope tied to scaffolding under London's Blackfriars Bridge. He was dressed in a gray suit with a white waistcoat and a blue striped shirt. He wore shoes and socks but no tie or belt. An expensive watch on his wrist was stopped at 1:52 a.m. and nearly 12 pounds worth of pieces of bricks were stuffed into his trousers. A young postal clerk had made the grim discovery on his way to work on the morning of June 18, 1982, and alerted the police. Officers who examined the body found a wallet containing around 13,000 in various currencies: Italian, Austrian shillings, American dollars, Swiss francs, and a passport bearing the name Gian Roberto Calvini. This man was found dead, but why and how does the church play into this? Well, the local writes, the chairman of Milan's Banco Ambrosiano, in which the Vatican was the main shareholder, had been found guilty of illegally exporting billions of lire. He shaved off his mustache and fled to London, where he was murdered. An American archbishop wanted for questioning was granted immunity by the Vatican, while 5 Italians were acquitted of the crime in 2007. Basically, this guy was in deep with some very bad people, and the Vatican were some of those people. Also pretty questionable just literally giving immunity to this archbishop because you can. It should also be noted that this banker was believed to be in deep with the mafia as well. The Vatican seems to have an interesting choice in friends. Number 2 on this list is World War II. I don't think it's unfair to say that World War II might have been the closest that we got to a fight where it truly was good versus evil. One side was fighting for freedom and the other side represented death and hatred. Thankfully for all of us, freedom won out in the end and the horrifying regime that was trying to take over collapsed. After World War II, some people had to pay for what they did. After all, it saw arguably the worst genocide in history and some horrible wartime atrocities. People were put on trial and individuals who hadn't been supporting the freedom side were heavily scrutinized. The Vatican during this time was noticeably pretty silent though. Who did they support during this period of time, and why didn't they do anything? It's believed that Jewish people were actually rounded up outside of the Pope's window at one time or another, and the Pope would have been able to see firsthand what was actually going on behind closed doors. Why didn't he do anything to stop this? The actions, or lack thereof, of the Pope at the time, Pope Pius XII, have been under heavy fire for years. It's even been thrown around that this Pope collaborated with these deathly acts and was on board with them. Now, there isn't any proof of this, but the Vatican isn't necessarily opening their doors and having people come in to check their records either. They would love to keep whatever went on back then completely under wraps and just forget that it ever happened. Sounds to me like something potentially sketchy might have been going on with the church that they don't want us to know about. And finally, number 1 on this list is Pope John Paul I. This is one of the biggest scandals to rock the church and the Vatican, and something that they're more than happy to keep under wraps. The Week writes, "In The Godfather Part 3, a shady deal between the Mafia and the Vatican leads to the murder of the Pope. Was this based on a true story? Possibly." On the morning of September 28, 1978, Pope John Paul I was found dead sitting up in his bed after only 33 days in office. Although Vatican officials claimed the 65-year-old Pope died of a heart attack, there was never an autopsy, and at the time, the Vatican definitely had ties to organized crime. Sure enough, in 1982, Vatican Bank President Father Paul Marinkis resigned from his post after a series of scandals exposed the bank's ties to the Mafia. Eventually, the bank had to repay more than $200 million to its creditors. But Marinkis was never indicted of a crime, and though he was suspected of being involved in several mysterious deaths, including Pope John Paul I, Marinkis successfully claimed diplomatic immunity in the United States and retired to Arizona in 1990 and died there 16 years later. Until I started really digging into potential church secrets, I never had any idea that they had ties to the Mafia. This is because they've tried to cover it up as much as possible. Now, you might be thinking, in this example specifically, that the fact that they neglected to do an autopsy is evidence of something. Like the church knew that they would find something that they didn't want to be revealed. But the truth is, they never do an autopsy on the Pope. It's believed that performing an autopsy on the Pope will taint the body in some way, and that it'll make it harder to get into heaven. The body must remain clean and untampered within its path to God. This is all fine and good, but it means that you get instances like this where this person potentially got murdered and no one will be able to prove it. It's also really hard to get anywhere with the higher ups of this organization because oftentimes they just claim diplomatic immunity. It's widely believed now that the Vatican was at one point deeply involved with the Mafia and might even still be. They have way more money than anyone thinks that they should have, and this money didn't just appear out of thin air. It's possible that their ties with the Mafia in this case even caused a murder. But there you have it, guys. That is our list of the top 5 mysterious secrets the church is hiding from us. Please let me know in the comments down below what you thought about this list and some other potential secrets that the church could be keeping from us that you guys know about. Also, please hit the like and subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching. I've been your host, Nicholas Playlog, and I will catch you next time.